This video is for the stickheads out there. The reefers who hear SPS and your heart skips a beat. You know who you are. A half-inch frag with a coral that doesn't move? So what? It's SPS and you want it. You know all the high-end corals by name and you can identify them in the dark. To fuel your SPS fetish, I dropped into Worldwide Corals to pick on a high-end pack of SPS that will not only add color, but also growth pattern variety to even the most die-hard of SPS reefs. Worldwide Corals display tanks are all stuffed with SPS, and every time I drop in, I always find pieces I want. To whittle down the thousands of selections, I enlisted the help of Chris Tournier. Chris has been on both sides of the industry, from exporting corals to importing corals to now growing and selling corals. He knows his stuff, and I'll be in good hands. Chris, this looks like a big high-end SPS type tank.
That it is. It's 900 gallons. Every single frag in here started as a 1-inch frag about a year and a half ago.
But wild caught 1-inch frag?
No, not wild caught.
Okay.
Most of them were brought from other tanks that we've had in our store that have been grown out for many a year. And some of them also came from other vendors that we trust. Most of them have come from a cultured frag.
Chris, a common misconception is we got to go wild caught acro to get crazy colors. You don't buy that?
I don't buy that. For what I've seen over the years in this industry, and the transition has been made to culturing corals, the advantage of having a cultured coral over a maricultured coral, or a wild colony for that matter, is that they're transitioned to life in an aquarium.
What do you mean by that?
Because of the fact that when you're bringing a coral from overseas, you're getting corals that are used to the sun. So, and the parameters that pretty much don't change ever. I mean, for the most part, unless you get heavy rainstorms that can dilute the salinity or runoff, so on and so forth. So when you're bringing these corals in and importing them, for one thing, they're going through the stress of shipping through several different systems before they get to the home aquarium. Yeah. So in this sense, we have these frags that have been growing in. Some of these frags have been growing in an aquarium environment now for 8 years, 10 years, sometimes more. I mean, look at the Tyree pink lemonade. I mean, that's been there
10
forever.
years plus.
Yeah, and look at that color. I mean, it does not change.
Yeah.
And so our high-end Acropora, or other corals for matter, are the same. They don't transition, which is great, assuming that your parameters and your lighting and your flow, for that matter, flow is very important, is relatively similar to what we have or what other established vendors might have.
Because a lot of people think high-end acro means high probability of death. And you're saying that's not true at all.
It's not true at all. The great thing about a cultured frag is they are adapted to life in an aquarium, whereas a maricultured coral, or a wild coral for that matter, go through a lot of transition. You can see sometimes wild corals or maricultured corals can take 6 months, 8 months or more to transition to life in an aquarium. Because of the fact that these were all started from 1-inch frags and grown out to the size that you can see here, they're incredibly hardy. It's amazing. So we have excellent luck with frags that we ship. Everything does really well because of the fact that they're adapted to the lighting, to the water, to the artificial salts that we use, to the feeding regimen that we have. Everything that you can think of, they do amazingly well. And the color transition is negligible if they're placed in the right location.
So you look at this tank every single day. Point me out some high-end acros in this tank that you think I should have for my tank.
This super cool Acropora, which originates from Fiji, is called the nuclear grapes.
Nuclear grapes?
Yeah, and the species is called the Acropora samoensis. And it is one of those fatter branched Acropora that is similar to tabletops, has a bad rep when it does get into an aquarium environment because it is predominantly more difficult to keep. But with this particular one, because we've been growing out for close to 2 years now, is doing phenomenally well.
It looks phenomenal.
It's spectacular. It's one of my favorites.
And we got a good color mix too, the purple with the greenish type coral lights again. And like you said, it's a chunkier acro, which I love, as opposed to all the thins or the bushies. Almost borderline table too. It's really cool.
It's very nice. And if you do see it from up top, it actually has green polyps, which are really neat. So not only does it have green on the coral lights, and the deep purple on the branches and on the tips, but it also has the really nice green polyps, which are superb.
And this higher light, blast this thing with light?
This is a very high light acro.
Okay.
So as you can see from the location here,
Yeah, it's getting
it needs a good amount of light and flow, tons of flow.
Nuclear grapes? Yes, please. Adding that one to my grab bag.
All right, this is our purple candle Acropora. It's an amazing acro because of the growth form that it has. It's much different than a lot of different species or varieties that you do see in this industry.
Because I see some high-end acro tanks and they're all bushy acros, and I'm kind of like, yeah, it's okay, but show me some creativity. This is something that I can put in my tank that's almost a table but granulosa type of look. It's really unique, and it's got a mix of colors because the coral light's a yellowish purple coral light fading down to a wine or plum body, and this is still how it's going to look in captivity because you've had it for a while. It's not going to change.
Yeah, no, this is a really nice Acropora for that exact thing because it stands out from all others.
And it's not up high. I see a lot of acro tanks where it's all acros up top, and then below the first foot, it's gone. This is something that's halfway down and it's doing fine.
Yep, this is a good example of like a medium light, something that you can keep a little bit lower to fill in some of those other areas below the higher light acros.
And it's going to give you a neat growth pattern that's something that'll catch your eye even if it is further down.
That's right.
Purple candle acro for my lower light areas. Check. I'll take that too. I love filling in lower light or dark areas of my tank with SPS. Something that I used to buy a lot in the day that always died was a red tabling acro. You were telling me you got something here that was going to prove me wrong.
We have an amazing tabletop. Yeah, let me show you.
All right, show it to me.
All right.
Chris, I have bought that coral so many times as wild caught because it looks fantastic. The polyps are so tight, the coral light structure is so tight together too. It always died. It always, without fail, it died. I gave up on it. Not so with this one.
No, this is our Man of Steel tabletop Acropora, and it is such a nice table because of the fact that you get this super dense branching pattern with these really tight small coral lights, and it does amazingly well. It's just really, really nice because for years and years, for probably 10, 15 years, I attempted on importing this or even exporting it, and it just never did well in the long run.
Because you've been on both sides of the food chain. You've exported coral, you've imported coral, and now you're another part of the food chain. You're growing this, so you know the track record with this guy.
Yeah, tabletops are by far, with this dense matrix that you see, tabletops are by far one of the most difficult out of any Acropora to keep in the aquarium environment.
And they're so tempting because they look so great, but I just knew they're going to die.
Yep. But this one, we've grown out, same as all the other frags, from an inch. And the actual growth rate on this coral, once you get it going, is explosive.
So it's up high, lots of light, lots of flow. It's a table, so it's going to shade what's underneath it.
It is true.
You got to think long term on this coral.
You do. Actually, it really makes a nice umbrella that you can put some of the lower light stuff. Leptocerus, Pavonas, Stylosinellia. There's a lot of different LPS that would just love being draped over by this acro. So you just adapt to it. There's some really nice high-end LPS that would do great under something like this as well.
I like the strategy. You got to be thinking about that, especially when your tank gets cranking. Man of Steel, let's see how you do because I've had your brothers before and they didn't like any of my tanks.
All right, here we got a couple millies that are super nice. We've got the famous Ding Dang Millipora.
Ding Dang Millipora.
Ding Dang.
Did you guys come up with that name?
Of course.
Okay. Ding Dang Millipora. Talk to me about this one.
All right, this is a super sweet acro. It's got all sorts of colors. I mean, it's got greens, it's got pinks, it's got orange, it's got
red,
long crazy polyps. It's got a little bit of red.
You can't beat a millie. That's a fuzzy millie that's really fuzzed out. Oh, that's great. But this guy above it is trying to steal the show. What is that?
This is our Jello shot.
Jello shot. Does it come with alcohol?
It should, because when you look at it, you certainly want to, you got a little buzz going on.
Yeah, because it's got everything.
Yeah, it's a really nice millie. It's going to be a brand new release. So we've got, greens and hot pinks and a little bit of blue.
Little deep red.
Little deep red, and it's also super fuzzy.
You gotta love the fuzz, man.
Got to pull it out of your belly button and try to, you know, farm it.
And these are two millies right next to one another. Can I put them next to one another? Worry about fighting?
Not really. I mean, they won't certainly grow into each other, but they can have, most acros can, for the most part, live right next to each other and not have a problem.
Okay, so these guys are going to grow well, and I don't have to worry so much about fighting. But hey, if it fights, I can cut up some frags and trade them or sell them to somebody.
There you go. That's right.
With a name like Ningapora, that one has to be on your list of corals in your tank. Jello shot Millie. You don't need the excuse that you were drunk to buy that one. With a high-end SPS pack picked, I admire the mother colonies one last time, then sent the frags onto my 450-gallon reef. Let's set the stage to see how these corals do in my tank. My tank is a 450-gallon reef powered by 6 Ecotech Marine G4 Radion Pros. I'm running the Coral Lab AB Plus program for 13 hours a day with about a 2-hour ramp up to a maximum intensity of 75%. Flow is provided by 4 Ecotech Marine MP60s and 2 MP40s. All these frags came to my tank about July 2017, except for 2. The nuclear grapes came in a couple months earlier than the rest because I picked it down on a previous order before I filmed this show. It had a head start, and it looks great. I love this coral, and I should have mounted it higher up as it's getting some shade now from this guy. I'd hacked the offender out, but the nuclear grapes frag is fully encrusted on the rock, so it's here to stay. The Ding Dang Millie did come in July, but it got knocked off the plug and I had to reorder it several months later. It is doing well, and being that it's a millie, it will likely catch up with the others. The purple candle is starting to grow several branches, so it's really starting to take shape. Per Chris's recommendation, it is lower down in my tank and medium light, so it's a great way to get SPS below the halfway mark in your reef. One of the things I'm big on is choosing corals not only for color, but also for growth patterns. I'm unimpressed by tanks that are filled up with all the same types of acros. It shows a lack of imagination and a lack of strategy on the part of the reef keeper. A true SPS head will be focused on getting a diversity of growth patterns to create diversity and therefore a more interesting SPS dominant tank. Man of Steel. Remember how I said earlier that I bought this coral as a wild colony several times over and it always died? Here's proof. This is the skeleton of a wild colony of Man of Steel that, you guessed, didn't make it. The worldwide coral's Man of Steel is doing well though. This coral spent most of its time in my tank building a base for a tabletop that will one day become. Now that the base is fully encrusted on the rock, it has started to grow up and its growth is accelerating. I may move this guy to get the tabletop overhanging the reef look that I see so much when I'm diving in the ocean. Jello shot. Chris wasn't kidding when he said it gives you a buzz when you look at it. The colors on this one are intense even as a frag. This coral is also building a base for itself and is now starting to grow vertically. Onwards and upwards, Mr. Jello shot. I need more of those colors and I need them now. I'm only a couple minutes in on most of these corals, and I've had a 100% survival rate, and they all are coloring up and healthy. Thanks, Chris, for your recommendation on these, and the merits of picking cultured corals is definitely showing in this high-end SPS pack. People always ask me, where can I get the things that I see in your show? And the answer is right there at the link at the top of the screen. That will take you straight to the Worldwide Corals website where you can grab this high-end SPS pack. And once you grab the pack, take pictures. I want to see how the corals grow in your tank compared to mine so that we can compare notes. Thanks, Chris and the whole team at Worldwide Corals for putting together this high-end SPS pack. The corals look great in my tank. I'm excited to see them grow out and giving me even more eye candy for my big build. I'm Mark Callahan, Mr. Saltwater Tank. This has been Mr. Saltwater Tank TV. Till next time, have a good one, enjoy your tanks, and know your tank personality.